Well, hi everyone. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. My name is Nicholas Reid from Reid Corporate, and on behalf of New World Resources, ASX ticker NWC, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this Resources Rising Stars investor and shareholder webinar. Well, it's been a busy start to 2025 for New World, with the company recently achieving several key permitting milestones at its Antler Copper Project in Arizona, announcing senior board and management appointments, and finalising a successful $14 million placement, which was underpinned by some cornerstone North American investors. Against the backdrop of a strengthening copper market and a fast-changing geopolitical and domestic political environment in the US, New World is advancing its flagship project towards a final investment decision. Encouragingly for investors in the copper space, the red metal has also been on the rise this year. It's been closing in on the $10,000 a tonne level, rising around 12% this year in response to Chinese economic stimulus, the threat of import tariffs in the US, and supply shortfalls. Citigroup recently forecast that copper would hit $10,000 a tonne in the next 3 months as the global market remains tight. Well, New World's Managing Director Nick Woolrych recently said that the planets were aligning for the company as it worked to advance one of the highest grade copper assets in the USA towards production. So we're absolutely delighted to have Nick joining us this morning and to hear what he has to say about what New World can look forward to over the coming months. Nick joins us online from Sydney this morning, and I'm also delighted to welcome Kyle Lindahl, whose appointment as New World's Chief Operating Officer was announced just this morning. Kyle has been spearheading the Antler development in country in his previous role as VP Project Development, and he joins us from Nevada. So we're delighted to have him on board as well. So welcome to both Nick and Kyle. Just before I hand over to them to run us through the presentation deck, a couple of quick instructions. This is intended to be an interactive session. So there is a Q&A tab on your webinar browser. It's on the right-hand side of your screen. Please take full advantage of that and send in your questions while the guys are presenting so that I can put all the questions to them at the end. I'm sure you'll have some questions and I know that they'll be delighted to take them. So that's it from me. I'd love to hear some more from the New World team. So I'm going to hand over to Nick to please run us through the story. Please go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Nicholas. Very much appreciate you arranging today's webinar. It's our first ever shareholder webinar, and so I'm really looking forward to any questions that might come from our shareholders, both current and prospective. Only thing I want to correct you on is copper's actually closing in on $11,000 a tonne this morning. So I think you're dead right, and that coupled with the gold and silver prices as well as the other commodities we're producing at Antler mean that we're setting ourselves up to succeed over the next little while, and timing has been good to become the ASX's next copper producer. Look, a lot of you have probably seen this slide before. It has changed a little bit over the course of this year for a number of different reasons. As you mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, successfully closing our $14 million placement, which was an excellent outcome. We welcome a number of new institutional shareholders onto our register. We are the best part of 40% institutionally owned now. Our top 5 shareholders own more than 25% of the company, and we have this placement has really set us up with a strong shareholding base of people who will support us as we go through our development transition. We're very lucky to have that led by Resource Capital Funds and Regal as our major shareholders. And there's a lot of other shareholders that are below 5% that are going to support us on the next stage of our development as well. Board and management wise, look, first and foremost, we welcome to the board Gil Clausen. Gil is a very experienced North American based non-executive director. Gil has done what we're trying to do at Antler time and time again, both in Arizona and also in other parts of the United States and Canada. And already Gil is contributing a significant amount around the board table, and Kyle and I were lucky enough to spend the last couple of weeks with Gil over in North America, and the insights he brings to this project development are significant. So welcome to Gil. And look, most recently, just this morning, Nicholas mentioned Kyle. Kyle is our newly appointed COO. Kyle's in a very broadly defined sense, Kyle's leading all of our development activities in the United States. And again, it's not Kyle's first time doing this, and building projects, building teams, and getting Antler from an exploration project into development is his key focus, pretty much 24 hours a day. So I'm very happy to have Kyle leading all development activities on the ground, and both from our permitting, financing, construction point of view, Kyle's the guy. We also recently announced Woolrych as our new CFO. Woolrich's a highly experienced corporate finance executive and brings another valuable skill set to the table as we go into raising our project finance and go through our streaming and structured finance processes, which are very well advanced and progressing well, which I'll talk about later on. And finally, Pat Siglin, who's been with New World for some time, is now our VP Exploration. And look, Pat has been responsible for finding Antler. He's responsible for maintaining what is in our DNA, which is a very core focus on exploration over the coming months and years as we go and look to try and grow both Antler and also find other VMS projects nearby. We've got a great land holding, and Pat's the guy to capitalise on that. So with the announcement this morning and the changes around the table, we very much now set up New World to succeed with the right people in the right places to go and build out the team as we get into development. Look, I do talk about this slide a lot. I'm not going to go through the granular project details today, which I tend to do at most conferences and those sorts of things, but this is just a reminder as to why we're here. Antler is an incredibly high-grade deposit, and we have an incredibly high-grade mine plan as outlined in our PFS, which we did in August last year. That is now going through into DFS, as I'm sure Kyle will talk about. We've outlined 30,000 tonne per annum construction capacity, a 12-year mine life, and also, I think most importantly in that bottom bar there, and I don't want to harp on about the copper price too much, but currently at spot prices, we're showing 46% higher returns than we put out in our PFS, and best part of 40% higher free cash flow over the life of the project. So this is a project that's significantly leveraged to the copper market as well as the precious metals market, and we believe our timing coming into development is hopefully going to be bang on. Kyle will talk about more about this later on. We believe we're developing Antler from a best practice perspective in almost every sense. We've got a very supportive permitted jurisdiction. We're using low impact underground mining with paste backfill and dry stack tailings, best practice in the state of Arizona. And we also have access to cheap renewable power from the grid. So it's a very good time to be building a precious metals project, a base metals project in the United States. Look, this slide is sort of saying the same thing in another way, but our key competitive advantage with Antler is that we are located in the copper capital of the United States, Arizona, and there's unprecedented support right now for domestic production in the US. We have patented mining claims on privately owned land, which is the gold standard as far as land ownership goes when it comes to building a project. And the tailwinds in almost every regard from a permitting and government support and financing point of view are almost unprecedented. So we're very lucky in that sense. We're doing our best to capitalise on that. Per recent announcements, we're now on a path to production in 2027. We will be permitted in Q1 2026. We'll be starting early work construction late this year and then full construction next year and producing copper in 2027. Project economics are exceptional, and we do have one of the best VMS land packages in the business, and we'll be finalising our 2025 and 2026 exploration plans over the coming months.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Certainly appreciate the introduction, and I'm very happy to talk about the project. So thanks again for the opportunity. I think everyone's pretty familiar with certainly copper in the United States, but certainly in Arizona, it's a foregone conclusion that it's well known in the jurisdiction. So certainly looking at Arizona specifically, 74% of the US copper is mined in Arizona, employing roughly 74,000 people. So it's certainly a major contributor to the economy of Arizona, and certainly has a lot of support through the local, federal, and state applications in terms of our adjudication of permits, as well as public support. Again, looking at the left-hand column on the bottom left-hand side, you'll begin to look at projects that have been permitted and have received major permit approvals over the last, call it 2 to 3 years. Certainly Hud Bay, Rosemont, Copper World. For those who are familiar with that, that is another major copper project just south of Tucson. South 32 Hermosa is well underway in terms of construction. They're sinking shafts there, as well as doing some decline work for their zinc project, as well as some of the critical minerals there. And then looking further south in terms of Capstone and their Pinto Valley project, that's another up and coming one as well. But you can see on the right-hand side there of that list are the major investments associated. So Mineral Park, which is about 20 minutes north of Kingman, that is a Waterton project that is fully funded, about $600 million. And as a part of that is a $150 million commitment from Wheaton. And then looking at Santa Cruz and then Arizona Sonora, and you're starting to see some of the best of breeds coming and bringing their money into Arizona as well. So there's certainly some good support in terms of institutional investors that are putting money into Arizona as well. Looking at political tailwinds, certainly there's been quite a few waves that have been created from the United States and the new administration coming in. The quote on the left in the blue box, on the first day of his term, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that basically made a statement that permitting needed some efficiencies. So we certainly see ourselves in the sweet spot of capturing that. In the meantime, where we were going through our BLM mine plan of operations, we were just about to receive NEPA adequacy, which is a critical milestone in the evaluation of our federal permit. That will allow us to really capitalize on a lot of these efficiencies that are being stated by that executive order. The box on the right is looking at the impact of copper in terms of domestic production. That is part of the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security. They have initiated what's called Copper 232, which is actually looking at critical infrastructure such as energy, defense, and critical infrastructure projects, and then looking at it from the evaluation of how does copper and how is it instrumental in terms of the execution of these projects. So hopefully with that, it will be a tailwind for us to be able to push down the line as far as being a domestic producer that will sell commercially within partners of the United States. And as noted there, part of the Quad, currently going through some work with that. But mainly we're seeing a lot of really good information coming down the track in terms of U.S. domestic production and keeping it part of the critical mineral side of it as well for the United States. This is a big one for us. I think most on the call are very aware of permitting in the United States being second in the world in terms of length, which is not a good thing. But in terms of Antler and how we're being evaluated, it has the potential to be very advantageous for the execution of our project. So as noted, our federal mine plan of operations, MPO, is currently in what's called the NEPA process. That is in accordance with the Council on Environmental Quality, is a 1-year adjudication process under an environmental assessment. So in a letter that we received from the BLM, which is the Bureau of Land Management, stated that we were being evaluated under an EA, and that is 1 year from start to completion. And that project, or this timeline, was kicked off in mid-February. So that puts our timeline for evaluation and our FONSI to be completed by this time next year, so Q1 of 2026. That's a major milestone for our project to have the federal permit in hand in 1 year. Looking now at the Aquifer Protection Permit, that is a state permit. That is our longest lead permit with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. We received our determination of completeness in December of last year, and we're now going through substantive review. A lot of the aspects that Nick mentioned previously that we have put into our basis of design in terms of dewater tailing storage facilities, lined containment, lined facilities, all help in the adjudication of our project in accordance with best available demonstrated control technology. That makes it easier for the evaluator to look at and approve. So we've already kind of facilitated aspects of it in terms of engineering and design. Looking at the air quality control permit, that is a key one for us as well in terms of early construction. That was deemed complete at the end of September of last year, and we're currently going through substantive review. So we're hoping to receive that by Q3 of this year, and that will allow us to complete some early dirt works and get into the underground as soon as possible. As another enabler for that is the Arizona State Mine Inspector, what's called Mined Land Reclamation Plan. That was submitted in February, and timelines with that for approval are 6 months. So we're hoping to have 2 major enabling permits for early execution work by Q3 of this year. So those are big milestones for us, and they're currently with regulators, all deemed complete and under evaluation by the institutions. Looking at the Arizona State Underground Injection Control Permit, we're currently going through our what's called LEAF 1315 testing. It is a process to look at the application in terms of leachates when you put it back underground, and making sure that it is not detrimental to any of the aquifer water quality standards in Arizona. So we're hoping to have those results here within the next couple of months, and then have that finalized by Q3 of this year as well. Looking at government and community engagement, this has really been a main area of focus for us since I joined in February of last year. It's been a priority for me to get in front of both federal, state, and local community members to make sure that we're verbalizing our project description, but also getting in front of any kind of public messaging that we can control the narrative on. So as a part of federal, we did host Representative Paul Gozer. He's a federal congressman for us in Mojave County. He was a former member of the House Natural Resources Committee and is an avid supporter of our project. So he's definitely an advocate for us and is currently a congressman in his 6th term. We also, a week later, hosted member of Senator Kelly, so Arizona Senator Kelly's office, Deputy Director Coral Evans. She visited our project, was very supportive as well. We've also kicked off our NEPA process, and so we work with the Kingman Field Office on a weekly basis to get through this 1-year process towards evaluation, and then hence our permit approval. Now looking at the state and county level, we did have a visit during Representative Paul Gozer's visit in October by Ron Gould. He's our county supervisor for our area, and is very supportive. He certainly appreciates all the infrastructure, the upgrades that we're providing to his local constituents as well. Just last week, we did present to Governor Hobbs' office, gave some good 1-hour-long presentation, supportive of our project, appreciates us controlling the message and being in front of them as well. Looking now at tribal and community, we have hosted 3 tribal communities, and we host our 4th this Friday down at site. So overall, it's been a very positive reaction to our project, and they appreciate our transparency in the process. Looking at more granular, certainly our nearest neighbors, we did have a tailgate barbecue with them in October of last year, where we rolled out the maps, answered questions, and answered some very detailed questions in terms of project application, basically being in their backyard. How are you going to impact my life in terms of where I live? And again, it's talking through that, understanding what their concerns are, and addressing them. We did also hire John Stefka. He is our environment and community manager. He's a great resource for us. His background is with the Moss Gold Mine, which, as the crow flies, is about 30 kilometers west-northwest from the Antler Project. Has great relationships existing with the Bureau of Land Management in Kingman, as well as the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality people as well. So he can fit right in, and has certainly contributed quite a bit over the last 5 weeks that he's been with us. We also have launched a new website, so I encourage everybody on the call to visit antlercopper.com. It's an organically created website that really does detail some of the aspects of our project and how we're implementing best practices in the development of our project. Back to you, Nick.
Thanks, Kyle. One thing is quickly worth touching on with all of this around and permitting and community and engagement with the regulators. We often have this photo of the Antler head frame and on the previous slide with our visitors standing in front of the head frame. Antler is a past producing mine, and it did produce 70,000 tons of copper, between the end of World War I and the 1970s. And there is an existing disturbance on this mine site. Clearly, that is also an advantage to us in terms of being able to demonstrate the fact that we can clean up this existing disturbance as part of our development plan. There's no liabilities to New World related to that. It is simply part of our development plan and has been for all of our permit applications. There's a lot of support from the Arizona state to clean up existing mine sites, and we'll certainly be doing that as part of our development plan. But this is by no means a greenfield pristine site, which is also significantly helping us in terms of navigating the permitting process. Now, Kyle mentioned a long lead time previously for projects around the world, really, in relation to getting from discovery to production. What New World, in my view, has been able to do over the last 4 or 5 years is pretty remarkable in terms of acquiring this project, drilling it out to a resource of 11.4 million tonnes at 4.1% copper equivalent, completing feasibility studies, announcing reserves, completeness determination on all of our major long lead time permits, as well as laying some foundations to get this project built. And that's been done in 4.5 years. We often get told we're not moving fast enough, which I understand the frustration with shareholders that may be the case, but we're now clearly rapidly advancing to get us into production as soon as we can. The first step of that, as I mentioned before, is materially done in terms of establishing the cornerstones of our US operations team and establishing some board expertise. By this time next year, we could have 200 plus people working for New World, and so getting the right cornerstones to build out that team is critical, and I believe we've done that now, led by Kyle and Warwick and Pat. Our DFS is well advanced. Metallurgical test work is proceeding well. Resource update is proceeding well as well. We're on track to have our DFS done by the end of the year, which has been our consistent communication throughout the last couple of months. This year, we're also focused on project funding, which I'll talk about the next slide, and starting the early work. So upon receipt of the air quality permit, which Kyle mentioned, we can start work on the site works, including the decline development later in this year, once we get that air quality permit in place. And then 2027, first concentrate and commercial production. Look, beyond that, I'm waving my arms around a little bit, cash flow generation, all that sort of stuff. But the fact is we should be producing copper in 2027, which is all things are indicating that's going to be a pretty good time for the base metals market globally, and particularly in the US. That last point is quite important. We are looking at Antler as it stands to be the cornerstone of a North American base metals business. And so we're very focused on how we can grow out not just Antler and then move on to the next projects and beyond as we grow out this into to be a bigger base metals producing company. So financing, I get a lot of questions around financing. The main thing for financing is we are running a formal process at the moment with a number of parties involved around looking at both structured finance and precious metal streaming, which I've talked about extensively. Those numbers you can see there around precious metal streaming, about 288 million of revenue life of mine. That's at the PFS price assumptions. That's materially higher today. And so there is a significant precious metals component to Antler, which we're looking at how we can monetize. We have underpinned our share structure over the last couple of weeks by cornerstone investors from North America and Australia. And look, the reason we did that is to give ourselves the runway to not just do the first financing that pops over our fence, but do the right deal. And we're very focused on doing that. We've got a lot of DD processes on the go and at the moment, and everything's looking pretty good for us to be announced a successful financing structure for Antler over the next couple of months. So precious metal stream I've talked about, structured mine finance also forms a part of that. Now, look, the world has changed over the last couple of months in North America around critical minerals funding. It's fair to say a lot of the agencies we're dealing with are also learning in real time at the same time as us. However, we have got very strong communication channels to the key US government departments and agencies, as well as specialist mining finance providers in the project finance world. Probably that first dot point, the US government departments and agencies is the real focus for the next little while. There is a lot of liquidity available for domestic critical minerals production in the United States at the moment from agencies like Exim Bank, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and the Department of Interior, and and the Department of Commerce. And we are exploring all of those avenues as we look at how we're going to build out our capital stack to get Antlers built. We do have a significant amount of cash flow generated at Antler over the first 5 years of operations, about $500 million US, and that does afford us a lot of flexibility when it comes to looking at financing structures that might work well for our project. And in the third column there is strategic project JV and offtake finance. As well as all of that, we are looking at how partners could help us at Antler achieve our objectives through either offtake financing, minority joint venture interests, and those sorts of things. That's fair to say probably column 1 and 2 are the priorities right now. However, there is a lot of interest out there for projects like ours in this part of the world at the moment. So look, our objective is to be able to demonstrate to the market that we can fully fund the Antler development over the course of the next little while, as well as commence our early works on our underground decline development, which does significantly de-risk the project from a development risk point of view, and also being aligned with people who are with us for the long term. So the recent equity raise, whilst it didn't have a retail component, was very focused on institutional investors who understand our development plan and who will be with us for the long term. They're long-only investors who are very focused on how we're going to get Antler built, because they're interested in operating projects rather than just sort of short-term gains. Look, this is another slide a lot of you have probably seen before, and I've noticed a lot of my ASX compatriots are now comparing themselves to Foran and the upside that it brings. But it is a real analogy to Antler from almost every project metric. And look, rather than just sort of saying we're undervalued, which is probably a bit lazy when it comes to comparing with Foran, I rather look at this and go, well, what can I learn from that? And clearly, what we can learn from the comparison with Foran is that they built their register, they build out partners that were with them for the long haul and could provide liquidity to build that project. And they're doing a terrific job at building McIlvenna Bay now. They've got long-term partners both on their register and also in their capital stack that are going to support them through that build. So look, I like to think we're on this journey as well, building out a smart register, building out a flexible and hopefully low-cost financing structure that will see us get Antler where it needs to be, and then afford us the flexibility to grow, as I talked about before. So I mentioned that exploration is in our DNA. The intent of today's call was to more provide shareholders an update of our development plans and particularly introduce Kyle to the broader shareholder plans. But rest assured, we are very focused on exploration. Pat Siglin is champing at the bit to undertake more exploration activities, and we are undertaking exploration activities presently both at Antler and the Javelin project. You all know by now that we have 8 past producing VMSs at both of those properties. We've undertaken some geophysics over the last couple of months. We're doing extensive field mapping programs, and our third-party expert from the Colorado School of Mines, Professor Thomas Monarchy, has significantly assisted in terms of how we are targeting. And look, we did put out an announcement a few months ago as well about a gold-rich alteration zone in the structural hanging wall of the Antler project. Now, we don't want to get too excited about that just yet, but clearly that's a high-grade gold zone at the Antler project. We're looking right now at what that means. We're still actively assaying core from that. Every drill hole we've ever drilled into Antler has gone through that zone, so we're actively assaying that material now. And they're the sorts of things that doing this sort of exploration review has afforded us the opportunity to identify. So, look, over the next couple of weeks internally, we'll be determining what the exploration and drilling plan looks like over the course of 2025 and the first part of 2026. But it's very much watch this space with exploration. We have a great land property, and we're very focused on getting every possible ton of copper we can out of it. So look, Nicholas, I think probably over to you now. I can leave this slide up on the screen if you like, but yeah, I'm happy to take questions from anybody who wishes to ask them.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much for that, Nick and Kyle. That's a great presentation, great run through. We'll get right into it. And just a reminder to everyone, I see that there's quite a lot of questions there already, but let's take full advantage of having the guys on the spot here. And so don't forget to send your questions in. Nick, I'll just start. You touched on the capital raise there, your institutional $14 million raise, which was, I think, well received, announced recently. I have had the question from a lot of shareholders, and I just wanted to put it to you about why you decided to do that as a placement with no offer to retail investors. Can you give us some further sort of commentary around that?
Yeah, I can, Nicholas, and I appreciate where the question's coming from. Look, it was a very targeted raise. I appreciate I haven't necessarily named the investors. They are below 5%. A lot of them that have come on, but it was to US-based predominantly institutions that are long only in terms of their involvement at Antler. So very much the objective was to get it out of the way, get it done under our allowable placement cap, and then move on rather than having a second tranche or a retail component hanging out there in the market. Look, there's opportunities for shareholders to pick up shares at New World at the offer price in the market, and has been for some time. Unfortunately, we're a case study for the world famous Lassonde curve, Nicholas, and so there's a lot of we don't have that the excitement in the market as we transition to development. So unfortunately, there has been opportunity for people to buy at the offer price or below recently, and I'd encourage them to do so. But yeah, for this raise, it was very much a strategic, long-only, institutional-led raise, and we were very focused on getting it done and getting it done quickly so we can move on to the other financing aspects that we're looking at.
That's great. Thanks, Nick. Interesting question here from an investor. Considering your US operations, would you consider or would you plan a proper US stock listing in the future, whether OTC, QB, QX, or even NASDAQ? The investor says he imagine that could be achieved in 2027 in conjunction with the start of production. Is that something that's on your radar?
Yes, it's on our radar. I can't talk about when I think it's going to happen because I don't know, and if it's going to happen indeed. Certainly the board of directors at the moment are not looking at that. And indeed, look, you are seeing a lot of companies coming down this way as well, down to the ASX from North America. It's fair to say that TSX particularly, and I know that the question didn't mention the TSX, but the TSX particularly it's a pretty difficult place to be at the moment, and there's a big gap between the winners and the guys who are doing it tough. Foreign's a clear example of the winners. But we're an American project. We're trying to attract American investors, and I think we could definitely have some success if we did look at the North American listing. Right now, we're a very, very lean management team. We don't have a lot of management capacity. We're doing our best to sort of spend every dollar we have in the ground. There is a lot of cost that comes with having a US listing. So I think the question is probably right. Sometime later, whether it's 2026 or 2027 in conjunction with, a broader development financing or finally, or whatever, some sort of milestone down the track. The last thing you want to do with a dual listing is just do it just for the sake of doing it. It's got to be done for a reason, be it raising capital, attracting investment. And, if the money's telling us and if the investors are telling us they want to see us in North America, then we have to listen to that.
Great. Makes sense. Thanks, Nick. Question here, possibly for Kyle. It's a permitting question. Is the federal NEPA permit required for the entire project or just the area below the patented claims?
So, great question. The NEPA process is a part of the Bureau of Land Management evaluation. So it is about 32 different, I would say, dot points that range from water. How do you impact the water? How do you impact any native species, any critical species on the project? Visuals, the power lines. How does that impact the public land? So it is a part of it. Basically gives guidance to the federal permit review and subsequent approval. So yes, we do need NEPA approval, but the NEPA is the process that the BLM have to follow in terms of a project evaluation. So once you get through the NEPA process and you look at mitigation circumstances, then you'll get your permit. So that's all part of the evaluation, is the NEPA process. So yes, we do have to do that, but it comes with different aspects of that when it comes to permit issuance, to say that you have evaluated different impacts and this is how you're mitigating them if there are any that need mitigation strategies. So it's all part of the process. But we do need it to mine underneath BLM ground. We also need it for infrastructure that lies on BLM surface area. So that's, of our 173 acres of total disturbance, only 2 acres is on BLM ground. So that's 99% of our project disturbance is on private land. Only 1% is on BLM ground. So again, that helps cut down on the amount of NEPA evaluation as well. So we're certainly very well placed in terms of evaluation and really limiting the scope that the BLM have in terms of project infrastructure and disturbance areas.
Thanks very much, Kyle. I might just throw another one at you while we're on the topic of permitting and community engagement. And you gave us some great insights into that process in your presentation. I just wanted to ask you a little more for your perspectives on community engagement over there, how the project's perceived, what some of the issues are, and how you see that sort of playing out over the next
Sure. It's from granular, our nearest neighbors, basically the folks that live within a kilometer of our project. They're focused in terms of dust mitigation, traffic. You look at Mojave County with the supervisor, with the county manager, with the public works manager. You're looking at aspects of community economic improvements, also in terms of how many jobs are coming in. How are we going to take care of these people? How are we going to get them in here? Looking at services, looking at state. It's important to get the narrative out there of, hey, we're the new kids on the block and we're wanting to build a copper mine. And oftentimes it's looking at how we compare against others in terms of the major Freeport McMorrins. You start looking at Copper World with Hud Bay. These are major copper mines that are in the neighborhood. So oftentimes when people hear copper and they hear mining, they think of major projects. Our project is an underground project with 173 acres. And when you look at these other projects, they're tens of thousands of acres of disturbance. So it's always good for us to identify those and to be able to narrate them when we start talking to members of our local community, but also in state. And then federally, we went through Washington, DC back in August of last year, met with Department of Commerce, looking at aspects with Senator Kelly's office. And we're already lining up visits for this May when we're going to make another run through Washington, DC and start meeting with really critical folks there as well, who can line us up and get our public support in terms of on a federal level. So all aspects from right next to our project all the way to Washington, DC, we've identified different pathways that we can find support for our project in terms of permitting, but also in terms of execution and then on into production.
Fantastic. Let's get into some funding questions. Nick, I'll throw this one over to you. In broad terms, in financing the project, do you have an idea yet of roughly what percentage would be contributed as capital? I'm guessing that means equity, and what percentage as debt instruments?
I'll give you two answers there, Nicholas. The first one, when we completed our PFS, we got an external party to review the financial model, and broadly, they saw a $200 million debt capacity, US $200 million debt capacity for the project. So essentially, 200 million debt, 100 million of equity. Now that was August last year. It's fair to say that since then we've gone through a much more detailed financing process, and certainly Warwick, our new CFO appointment, has been leading that and done a terrific job. Now, what we're seeing is that there's probably a number of different ways we can build that capital stack out rather than just the traditional debt equity. So certainly precious metal streaming is one, which I've spoken about. We don't have any binding term sheets on the table yet. The process is still ongoing, but it's fair to say that that equity number I just mentioned, it looks like that and a little bit more potentially will be taken care of if we go down a precious metal streaming path, which is very good. But at the same time, there are other ways to build out the capital stack alongside that. So we're seeing interest that's probably at the larger end in terms of the interest from the streaming parties, be it through straight streams or stream plus debts and other sort of mechanisms to fund this project. Now, I say that, but we also have other people who are looking at us from a more holistic financial point of view as well. So I think it's a really long way to not really answer your question at all, Nicholas, other than say, look, we think we can service 200 million of debt here based on the Antler cash flows. But I don't think we should be focused on the fact that we're going to have to raise another 100 million of equity at some point, because there are other ways to build out the capital stack for this project that are both low cost and flexible. And that's what we're focused on. We're not interested in doing an eye-wateringly expensive, many tranche structured financing deal. We're interested in what's a sensible level of leverage, sensible level of equity, and a sensible level of streaming that that's going to see our shareholders make a good return still.
Thanks, Nick. There's another funding question here. You can see where investors' heads are at. Would you say that a precious metal stream is your preferred funding strategy currently? And do you have a timing expectation of which quarter within this calendar year that you'd be able to announce a funding update?
Well, investors' heads are there, and so are ours. We're pretty focused on it because it's the key value driver for us, I see. And is it my preferred funding strategy? Look, I don't know. It is a really great financing strategy, and there's a lot of terrific projects around the world, some owned by majors, some owned by mid-tiers, that are being funded by precious metal streams. The counterparts we're dealing with have very big balance sheets. They have very sophisticated teams, and their due diligence process is very well drilled. And the market looks at where they invest, and certainly, they have an eye for good projects. So it's at the same time, our market cap's currently $70 million, Nicholas, and we need to raise 300 million. So we need to generate options for ourselves, be it through equity, be it through streaming, be it through structured debt and structured finance. So I think it's key to not fall in love too early with a particular structure. We're very focused on cost of capital, flexibility, and the things that are going to allow us to achieve ours and our shareholders' objectives. I love precious metal streaming. I think it's a great structure. I think it's low cost, and I think it's very well understood, particularly in North America, less so on the ASX, arguably. I think it's a great option for us, given our precious metals component. But I'm not going to say it's my preferred yet, because we're still going through that process.
Fair enough. Thanks, Nick. Another quick one here. Does Deterra Trident's existing Antler Copper royalties streaming agreements have any influence or impact on any future gold and or silver streaming arrangements or agreements?
Oh, so Deterra, we're happy to have them involved. They're very engaged in this streaming process, and they're aware of the process we're going through. In terms of any influence or impact, probably not really, other than we're doing what every good partner should do, and we're keeping them appraised of the options we have. They're clearly trying to grow their business and look at other options for royalties and streams, which is their core business. But they're also playing in a different space to some of the North American counterparts that we're dealing with. So look, very happy to have Deterra involved. They're very active and actually a terrific partner to be involved with. But they're not, holding the reins in any way in terms of this process we're going through.
Excellent. Thanks very much. The next question is, do you have to receive all the permits before finalising a financing package?
So again, two answers here. First answer is no. We are looking to finalise our financing package earlier than the receipt of our final permits. And indeed, one thing we're focused on is the receipt of our air quality permit, which we're hoping for by the middle of the year. That allows us to start construction activities ahead of all of our final permits being issued. Clearly, our board has to make a decision if we want to go down that path and deploy capital ahead of final permits being issued. We're very confident in our permitting position, and so we will need to present the case to the board at that point in time. But the focus of our financing has been to deliver us sufficient capital to undertake our site early works, our decline development, our other early construction activities over the course of the back end of this year, ahead of getting our final permits in place. It's a very well-trodden path in underground mining around developing in advance. I'm an underground miner, Kyle's an underground miner. We're big believers in that. So the idea of having our decline developed ahead of pressing the big go button on the processing plant is very important to us. We want to have the mine built to be able to feed the processing plant. So having financing in place to be able to undertake that before our permits come in is very important. So we will be in a position to articulate our funding strategy to the market well ahead of all our final permits being approved.
Great, thanks very much, Nick. The next question is, how far do you expect your existing cash to take you, and will the new shareholders likely support future equity raises? I'm guessing the answer is yes.
Well, yeah, look, I won't speak for them, but what they've told me. So, look, we're building out supportive shareholders if we do need to raise more equity. But I think our existing cash, so the cash we have now, will take us through fully permitted, fully done feasibility study, some site early works, land acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're well set up now for the course of this year, mate. If we want to go and start our decline development and those other early works activities, like I just mentioned before, we're focused on how they'll fit into the financing structures we're looking to put in place.
Fantastic. Well, just a couple more, I think, here to sort of round things out. Nick and Kyle, there's a question here about what Mike Haynes's role is with the company now.
Oh yeah, so Mike, as articulated the market, he is a non-exec director. So Mike is the guy responsible for finding Antler and getting it to the stage where Kyle and I sort of took over the operational side of things, and has been very successful in the exploration world. And clearly that's where he's most comfortable and what he likes doing. And so his input around the board table when it comes to exploration and doing business in the US is invaluable. So Mike's a very engaged non-exec director.
Fantastic. Just another community one that's popped up here, Kyle. A gentleman has asked, in the local community, are there any active groups who are very opposed to the development?
So sort of every time I get this, I knock on wood. But as today, no. We went through our exploration plan of operations, which follows the same process back in 2022. There was no public opposition at that point, and went through the public comment period, community, tribal engagement, same thing that we'll be going through, and there was no opposition at that time. Throughout the last few years, nothing has popped up. And then as we're trying to do now with the creation of antlercopper.com, is to really control the narrative in terms of getting our name out there, not letting it be a rumor mill. Let's talk about it directly coming from us, engaging with the local community, state regulators, and talking to them. So that way, when they hear of our project in the halls, they've heard it from us first. So that helps control it a lot. But to date, no, we have not received any negative feedback or news, press releases, anything like that for our project. I mean, Mojave County is very supportive of mining. There's 2 active major mines in Mojave County, Mineral Park as well as Moss Gold Mines. So I think most residents are very supportive of mining in Mojave County.
Fantastic. There was one that I skipped over early on the copper price. I might just cover it. I do like to try and cover all the questions that come in. Mike, Nick, probably it's a bit of a tricky one, trying to forecast the copper price. But the question was, we've heard about why the copper price has been going up recently, but could it be potentially negatively impacted by US tariff uncertainties?
Well, Nicholas, it's pretty tough to answer that, as you'd know. But like the answer is, look, potentially yes, I suppose. It's copper is related to industrial demand, and so if that reduces, then there is a world where the copper price reduces. But I guess the thing that makes me kind of offset that somewhat is I don't want to keep going on about this, but we are a US-based copper producer. Now, we're in discussions with US copper smelters. We're in discussions with people who do sell copper into the United States and produce copper in the United States. Look, that's our competitive advantage in some ways. Look, we've all read the news and we all know that the incoming administration is very, very focused on critical mineral supply chains. Copper and zinc are critical minerals. And so strengthening those supply chains and strengthening the domestic capacity in the United States is critical. Currently, I mentioned before, the copper price around $11,000 a tonne, or $4.97. It's $4.80 on the LME. So there is currently an arbitrage between selling copper in the United States and also the rest of the world. So there is a higher price for US copper produced in the United States than the rest of the world. So don't ask me to explain that, but I do know that I think with Antler coming on stream when it is, the fact that we're copper dominant, we've got zinc as well, it's also a critical mineral. If the US imposes tariffs on foreign metals, it is also trying to stimulate domestic infrastructure spending. And so demand for local copper could rise. There's additional incentives available from the government around financing and other means that will come into play. And so, look, we're pretty relaxed about it. The price will be what it'll be. However, if you were to put a pin in anywhere on Earth right now where we'd rather be producing copper than anywhere else, I'm pretty sure it's in Arizona. And that's sort of how we get comfortable on those risks.
That's fantastic. Look, thanks very much, Nick. I don't want to take up too much more of people's time, so we might sort of wrap things up. But if I could just maybe ask you, Nick, to give us your sort of 30-second elevator pitch as to why New World, if you're a shareholder, you should be holding and buying more of these shares.
No, look, I can do, and I do finish a lot of presentation to this slide, so hopefully it's not repeating myself too much. But look, and I just spoke about it then. We are located in one of the best development jurisdictions on Earth. I do feel like we've got the best team in the business now. We're all excited about our project. We all believe in Antler. We are focused on building out the US team. We're very focused on building a team around Kyle and Pat in the United States. And the fact that we've got one of the highest grade resources globally to underpin that is fantastic. So, look, we've got the right project, we've got exploration upside, we've got great economics, significantly leveraged to spot prices, as I mentioned, and we've got great timing. The critical minerals tailwinds are very significant. We've got flexibility around our offtake, we've got direct routes to market, all of those sorts of things that are sort of coming together to mean that, I think New World's hopefully going to have its time in the sun over the next 12 months. And our financing processes are well advanced. I think the market will be impressed with the results we get out of that over the coming months. And we're in good shape. And look, I'd also just encourage everyone, anyone who says they can't get in touch with me or have questions, I don't believe them. This is on the back of every presentation that's on the ASX, it's on our website. If anyone's got any questions about what we're doing or what we're up to or how they think we can do better, I'm all ears. So please get in touch. Happy to meet people, happy to email, or people just give me a call. And Kyle's done the same now. You might get better answers from him. I don't know, but yeah, feel free. We're not hiding from people. We want investors to understand what we're up to, buy into the story, and hopefully see what we see.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, guys. It was really good. Really appreciate your time, Nick and Kyle. And just in answer to another shareholder inquiry, a recording of this webinar will be available in the next 2 to 3 hours. It'll be emailed out. We'll post it up on YouTube. We'll put it out on all the company socials. So you can view it at your leisure in the coming days if if you weren't able to tune in live. But thanks very much. That was a great presentation, and we look forward to having both of you on in the future as well as this exciting project unfolds. So thanks for your time, and thank you to everyone for tuning in today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Nicholas. Thanks, everybody.